The overhead fluorescent lights hummed against the silence of the Krasnodar laboratory at midnight on October 14, 1939. Semyon Kirlian adjusted the voltage regulator on the hospital's high-frequency electrical equipment, the same apparatus he had been repairing for the past 3 weeks. His wife Valentina sat at the wooden workbench nearby, organizing photographic plates by size and sensitivity rating. The maintenance work should have been routine. Replace the worn copper contacts, recalibrate the frequency output, test the circuit under load conditions. But when Kirlian accidentally brushed his fingertip against the live electrode, something unexpected happened. Instead of the sharp shock he anticipated, a faint but distinct glow surrounded his skin for several seconds before fading completely. Kirlian stared at his hand, then at the equipment. The voltage reading remained steady. The frequency held constant. Yet something had just occurred that defied his understanding of basic electrical principles. He called Valentina over and repeated the contact deliberately. The same ethereal luminescence appeared around his fingertip, pulsing gently before disappearing into the darkness. They spent the remainder of that night developing what would become known as electrophotography. By placing objects directly onto photographic film and applying high-voltage, high-frequency electrical fields, they began capturing images of phenomena invisible to the naked eye. Leaves showed coronas of light extending beyond their physical boundaries. Insects appeared surrounded by halos of varying intensity and color. Human fingertips displayed complex patterns that shifted with emotional state and physical condition. The photographs were undeniably real, yet they depicted something that conventional physics suggested should not exist. When they photographed a freshly cut leaf, the film showed not only the remaining portion, but a faint outline where the missing section had been removed. This phantom leaf effect persisted across multiple trials, suggesting that some form of energetic imprint remained even after physical matter had been eliminated. Soviet medical institutes took notice of their work by early 1940. The photographs seemed to correlate with health conditions in ways that traditional diagnostic methods could not achieve. Healthy subjects produced bright, uniform patterns, while those suffering from illness or emotional distress showed dimmed or fragmented auras. Cancer patients displayed distinctive gaps in their electromagnetic signatures weeks before conventional tests could detect abnormalities. Research funding arrived from Moscow, along with teams of physicists and medical specialists. The Kirlians found themselves at the center of a growing investigation into what they termed the biological plasma body. Controlled studies began in sterile laboratory conditions, with calibrated equipment and standardized protocols. The results remained consistent across hundreds of test subjects and thousands of photographic exposures. Western scientists who learned of the research dismissed it as electrical artifact caused by moisture and ionization effects. The corona discharge visible on the films could be explained through conventional electromagnetic principles without invoking mysterious energy fields. Yet attempts to replicate the phantom leaf effect using purely physical explanations consistently failed to produce the documented results. The project expanded through 1941 and 1942 before beginning to contract without official explanation. Research notes disappeared from filing cabinets. Photographic plates went missing from storage rooms. When international observers requested access to the original equipment and documentation, Soviet authorities declined all requests, citing security concerns and ongoing investigations. By 1943, the Kirlians had been reassigned to routine maintenance work. Their laboratory was converted to standard medical equipment storage. The specialized cameras and high-frequency generators were relocated to undisclosed facilities where research continued under military oversight and classification protocols. Decades later, fragments of their original documentation surfaced through academic channels and private collectors. The phantom leaf photographs remained the most compelling evidence that consciousness or life force might persist beyond physical boundaries in measurable forms. Yet no modern laboratory has successfully reproduced the full range of phenomena documented in those early Soviet experiments. The implications extend beyond simple electromagnetic effects into questions about the fundamental nature of living systems. If biological entities generate detectable energy fields that persist after physical death or dismemberment, then current models of consciousness and identity may require significant revision. Contemporary variations of electrophotography exist in alternative medicine and parapsychological research communities. Digital sensors have replaced photographic film. Computer analysis has identified specific frequency patterns associated with different emotional and physical states. But the dramatic clarity and consistency of the original Kirlian photographs has never been fully replicated using modern equipment and methods. The difference suggests that either the original devices operated on principles not yet understood by current science, or that something about the analog photographic process itself was essential to capturing these phenomena. Digital noise cancellation and signal processing, designed to eliminate electromagnetic interference, may be filtering out the very signals that the Kirlians successfully documented. Meanwhile, in New York during the spring of 1895, Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments that would never appear in any published scientific journal. His laboratory on South Fifth Avenue overflowed with copper coils, rotating magnetic assemblies, and high-voltage apparatus that crackled with electrical discharges throughout the night hours. Tesla had been investigating what he termed vibrational harmonics, the idea that consciousness itself might operate as a form of electromagnetic resonance detectable through properly tuned equipment. His latest device consisted of bismuth crystal lenses arranged in a spiral configuration between two massive Tesla coils, generating precisely modulated frequency patterns. The apparatus functioned as a form of consciousness detector, designed to identify the presence of awareness without requiring physical contact or proximity. Tesla theorized that human thought generated subtle oscillations extending beyond the boundaries of the skull, creating what he called thought forms that could persist independently of their biological source. During one late-night session, Tesla adjusted the resonance frequency to 7.83 Hz, a value that would later be identified as the Schumann resonance associated with electromagnetic standing waves in the Earth's atmosphere. The laboratory air began to shimmer within the lens assembly's electromagnetic field. A flickering shape appeared near the center of the apparatus, moving and hovering before vanishing completely. Tesla was alone in the laboratory when this occurred. No assistants were present. No other equipment was active that could account for the visual disturbance. Yet he documented the experience in his private journal, along with detailed measurements of the electromagnetic conditions that produced the phenomenon. The following day, Tesla suffered what his assistants described as nervous exhaustion and was confined to bed rest for nearly a week. When he recovered, he sealed the consciousness lens apparatus in a steel container and discontinued all related experiments without explanation to his research team or financial backers. Years later, during interviews at the New Yorker hotel where he spent his final decades, Tesla would occasionally mention being in communication with forces beyond normal human perception. Most dismissed these statements as the eccentricities of an aging inventor. But analysis of his recovered technical diagrams suggests the consciousness lens incorporated principles that modern quantum physicists are only beginning to understand. The device used diamagnetic materials like bismuth and quartz in configurations that could theoretically detect zero-point field fluctuations, the quantum vacuum energy that permeates all space. If consciousness operates through interaction with these fundamental fields, rather than being produced entirely by neural activity, then Tesla's apparatus might have detected something genuine rather than imaginary. After Tesla's death in 1943, federal agents seized all his papers and equipment under national security provisions. The consciousness lens apparatus was never found among the catalogued items. Witnesses present during the confiscation reported seeing unidentified wooden crates removed from the premises, but these containers were never officially documented or acknowledged. What Tesla observed through his consciousness lens would pale in comparison to what Dr. Duncan McDougall discovered 2 decades later in a sealed hospital room in Haverhill, Massachusetts. On the morning of April 10, 1901, McDougall wheeled his custom-built precision scale into the tuberculosis ward of Cullis Consumptive's home. The apparatus occupied most of the small room, its industrial frame supporting a hospital bed calibrated to register changes down to a fraction of a gram. Temperature controls maintained steady conditions. Air displacement calculations had been verified multiple times. McDougall positioned his first patient, a man in the final stages of tuberculosis, onto the scale platform. The needle settled at exactly 140 pounds and 12.5 ounces. For the next 3 hours and 40 minutes, McDougall monitored both the patient's breathing and the scale's readout, recording measurements every 15 minutes in a leather-bound logbook. At 5:47 in the afternoon, the patient's breathing stopped. The scale's needle immediately dropped to 140 pounds and 12 ounces. A loss of exactly 3/4 of an ounce had occurred in the moments between life and death, with no corresponding change in temperature, humidity, or air pressure that could account for the discrepancy. McDougall repeated this procedure 5 more times over the following months, each time using terminally ill patients who had volunteered for the study. 4 of the 6 cases produced similar weight losses ranging from half an ounce to just over an ounce at the moment of death. The remaining 2 cases showed no measurable change. The precision of McDougall's equipment exceeded anything available for medical research at that time. His scale had been calibrated against certified weights and enclosed in a controlled environment that eliminated external variables. The sudden weight loss occurred too rapidly to be explained by the gradual release of bodily fluids or gases that follows death. McDougall's most disturbing control experiment involved 15 dogs, all euthanized under identical conditions using the same scale apparatus. In every case involving canine subjects, no weight loss was detected at the moment of death. This suggested that whatever departed from human bodies at death was absent from other mammalian species, or operated according to different principles. The Massachusetts Medical Society reviewed McDougall's methodology and found no obvious flaws in his experimental design. The scale manufacturer confirmed the accuracy of his measurements. Yet within 18 months, McDougall's funding was discontinued without explanation. His equipment disappeared during a hospital reorganization. The institution issued a statement distancing itself from the research and sealed all related documentation. McDougall spent the remaining 19 years of his life attempting to replicate his results using borrowed equipment and private funding. He never again achieved the precision or consistency of those original 6 measurements. When he died in 1920, his personal notes contained references to weight fluctuations that preceded death by several seconds, as if whatever departed from the human body began leaving before biological functions had completely ceased. 80 years later, in a converted telecommunications facility outside Kyoto, Dr. Takumi Hoshino was developing technology that would make McDougall's soul scale seem primitive by comparison. The Subconscious Visualization Project occupied 3 floors of the former telephone exchange building, its laboratories filled with functional magnetic resonance imaging equipment connected to machine learning systems capable of processing neural data in real time. Hoshino's team had spent 2 years training artificial intelligence algorithms to correlate specific patterns of brain activity with visual experiences. Volunteers were shown thousands of photographs while their neural responses were recorded through high-resolution brain scanners. The system learned to identify which regions of the brain activated when subjects viewed faces, landscapes, geometric patterns, and color variations. By late 2014, the artificial intelligence had achieved 93% accuracy in predicting what images subjects were viewing based solely on their brain activity patterns. Hoshino decided to attempt the next logical step, allowing the system to monitor sleeping subjects during rapid eye movement phases and reconstruct their dream imagery using only neural data. The first successful dream reconstruction occurred on November 18th during a test involving a graduate student named Kenji Nakamura. As Nakamura entered deep sleep, the monitoring system began detecting familiar neural patterns associated with visual processing. The connected computers translated these signals into crude but recognizable images, a sequence showing Nakamura walking through a library with impossibly tall shelves extending upward beyond sight. When Nakamura woke and described his dream, the computer-generated imagery matched his account with disturbing precision. The artificial intelligence had reconstructed not just the general content of the dream, but specific details including the grain pattern of wooden shelves, the color of book bindings, and the quality of light filtering through high windows. Subsequent dream recordings became increasingly detailed and accurate. The system captured dreams involving complex architectural spaces, moving figures, and emotional atmospheres that translated into visual representations with photographic clarity. But then the anomalies began. On December 3rd, a volunteer named Yuki Tanaka reported dreaming about a city she had never visited, complete with specific street layouts and building facades. The reconstruction showed an urban landscape with distinctive architectural features that Tanaka described in detail upon waking. When research assistants investigated, they discovered that the dream city matched the actual layout of a neighborhood in Prague that had been demolished in 1968, decades before Tanaka's birth. 3 weeks later, another subject dreamed of conversations conducted in ancient Greek, a language he did not speak or understand. The reconstruction captured not only the visual setting, but somehow encoded the linguistic content, which classical scholars later confirmed as grammatically correct Attic Greek discussing philosophical concepts that the dreaming subject had never studied. The research team began experiencing their own sleep disturbances. Multiple members reported nearly identical dreams, featuring a tall structure in an empty landscape with something observing them from its highest point. When they compared their dream journals, the consistency of detail across different dreamers was unsettling. Dr. Hoshino discontinued the project in March 2015, citing ethical concerns about memory interference. His official report mentioned technical difficulties with the equipment and recommended against further research using current methodologies. The laboratory was closed 6 months later. Hoshino relocated to a private research position and has not discussed the project publicly since its termination. The dream reconstruction technology was never patented or published in peer-reviewed journals. No academic institution has attempted to replicate the results. The artificial intelligence systems used in the project were dismantled, and their training data was reportedly destroyed to protect volunteer privacy. Yet rumors persist that government agencies acquired copies of the neural pattern databases before the official termination. Defense contractors have shown increasing interest in brain-computer interface technologies that could theoretically access subconscious information or implant synthetic experiences into sleeping minds. If Hoshino's team truly developed the ability to visualize dreams and subconscious imagery, then the boundary between private thought and external observation has already been crossed. The implications extend beyond simple privacy concerns into questions about the nature of memory, imagination, and the possibility that individual minds might be connected through unconscious channels that technology could access and manipulate. The Kyoto Laboratory building now houses a software development company specializing in mobile applications. The upper floors where the dream reconstruction experiments took place remain vacant. Building management cites structural concerns and has declined requests for tours or renovations of the space. Meanwhile, in the countryside of North Yorkshire, an abandoned farmhouse was attracting attention from researchers investigating reports of persistent atmospheric disturbances. Visitors to the property described sudden emotional shifts upon entering certain rooms, particularly a narrow hallway where picture frames hung broken along the walls. The British Society for Psychical Research deployed experimental equipment to monitor electromagnetic fluctuations and low-frequency vibrations throughout the building. Their instruments detected regular anomalies occurring at precisely the same time each night, forming patterns that suggested some form of environmental memory persisting long after the original events that created it. The Emotion Field Recorder team positioned their sensors throughout the Yorkshire farmhouse on a cold Tuesday in October 1987. Dr. Sarah Mitchell adjusted the phase-sensitive amplifiers, while her colleague Dr. James Hartwell calibrated the electromagnetic detection arrays. The house had been empty for 15 years, its last residents having departed after what local records described as a series of accidents. The first 3 nights produced minimal readings. Background electromagnetic noise from nearby power lines, seasonal temperature fluctuations, the usual atmospheric static that rural locations generate. The equipment hummed quietly in the darkness, recording data streams that would later reveal nothing more than baseline environmental conditions. On the 4th night, at exactly 2:46 in the morning, every sensor in the narrow hallway simultaneously registered a massive spike in coherent electromagnetic activity. The temperature dropped 8 degrees in 30 seconds. Multiple analog instruments experienced simultaneous distortion, their needle gauges swinging wildly before returning to normal positions. Dr. Mitchell, monitoring the equipment from the kitchen, felt an overwhelming sense of being observed. The sensation was so intense that she walked to the hallway despite having no logical reason to do so. As she stood in the corridor, images began forming in her mind that were not her own memories. A young boy falling down the staircase in slow motion, his small body tumbling against wooden steps while afternoon sunlight streamed through an upper window. Local parish records confirmed that 8-year-old Thomas Whitmore had died on the property in November 1932 after falling from the upper landing. The accident had occurred at exactly 2:46 in the afternoon, according to the coroner's report. The electromagnetic anomaly was manifesting precisely 12 hours after the original incident, as if some form of temporal echo had become anchored to the location. The pattern repeated every night for the following week. The same time, the same electromagnetic signature, the same temperature drop. Dr. Hartwell began experiencing similar intrusive memories during the events, seeing fragments of the accident from different perspectives, as if witnessing it through multiple sets of eyes. When they mapped the electromagnetic data using field visualization software, the anomaly formed a spiral pattern centered on the staircase location. The energy appeared to be rotating in a descending motion that matched the physics of a falling body, but the field persisted for exactly 90 seconds longer than any physical fall could have lasted. The British Society for Psychical Research received their preliminary report on November 15th. 3 days later, a private security firm with undisclosed funding sources purchased the property. The research team was informed that their access had been terminated due to insurance concerns. When they attempted to retrieve their equipment, they discovered that several key devices had been removed during the night. Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Hartwell constructed a simplified version of their recorder using personal funds and began testing it at other locations with violent histories. Battlefields produced faint but measurable anomalies. Former hospital sites showed irregular patterns. An abandoned execution chamber in Edinburgh generated readings so intense that their recording equipment overloaded and caught fire. The data from these secondary tests was never published. Both researchers accepted positions at different institutions within 6 months. Dr. Mitchell relocated to Canada and has not discussed the farmhouse investigation since 1988. If emotional events can imprint themselves onto physical environments with measurable electromagnetic signatures, then consciousness may interact with matter in ways that current physics does not recognize. The implications extend beyond simple residual energy into questions about whether awareness itself might persist in locations long after the minds that generated it have ceased to function. These concerns became more urgent when similar technology was deployed in Nevada 12 years later. The Halcyon Array Facility occupied a converted missile testing site 40 miles southeast of Las Vegas. The installation had been purchased by a consortium of defense contractors and theoretical physicists who required isolation for experiments involving high-energy electromagnetic systems. Their official research focused on atmospheric resonance effects and exotic matter interactions. Dr. Lena Mykoff arrived at the facility in August 2009 as the lead systems architect for Project Crossroads. The device they were constructing stood 3 meters tall in the center of a reinforced chamber, its interlocking magnetic coils and gyroscopic rings creating geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The cross-reality oscillator functioned by generating multiple electromagnetic fields oscillating at precisely calculated frequencies. These overlapping waves were designed to create interference patterns at quantum scales, theoretically producing what the research team called dimensional harmonic envelopes. The goal was not to tear holes in space, but to temporarily loosen the fabric of reality itself. The first 2 test runs produced interesting but inconclusive results. Vacuum fluctuations increased within the chamber. Particle detectors registered anomalous readings that fell within acceptable experimental margins. The third activation, however, lasted exactly 2 minutes and 34 seconds and changed everything that followed. During the test, a sealed mannequin positioned within the chamber moved. Security cameras captured its arm raising from its side to point toward the observation window, a motion that occurred while the figure remained motionless in all other respects. A hairline fracture appeared along the chamber's rear wall, spreading rapidly before sealing itself as if the concrete had temporarily become flexible. Dr. Marcus Webb, monitoring the test from the control room, began screaming that his reflection in the observation window was blinking independently of his own eye movements. The test was immediately terminated, but the disturbances continued for several days afterward. Team members reported memory inconsistencies. Dr. Mykoff recalled spending an entire Thursday conducting calibration tests that other staff members insisted had never occurred. Dr. Chen discovered that all the books in her apartment had been rearranged alphabetically, though security footage showed no one entering or leaving her residence. The most disturbing account came from Dr. Mykoff herself. During the test, she experienced what she later described as sensory doubling. While remaining aware of the control room, she simultaneously perceived a metallic corridor that she had never seen before. The hallway led to a vast space containing what appeared to be another version of the oscillator, but this device was active, pulsing with moving light and surrounded by figures she could not clearly identify. The facility was evacuated within 1 week. Official reports cited structural instability caused by magnetic interference, but satellite imagery showed the entire complex being demolished within 30 days. No follow-up research was published. The team members scattered to private sector positions, and Dr. Mykoff relocated to Finland without providing forwarding contact information. Leaked technical specifications from the project indicate that the oscillator's resonance frequencies correspond to theoretical predictions from M-theory regarding the vibration of hidden spatial dimensions. If the device functioned as intended, it may have created temporary access points between closely parallel realities, allowing brief exchanges of matter, energy, or information between dimensional layers. The implications suggest that our universe may not exist in isolation, but as part of a vast, multi-dimensional structure, where adjacent realities remain normally separated by barriers too thin to notice, but too strong to cross without technological intervention. Similar concerns about dimensional boundaries arose from research conducted in the Ural Mountains 3 years earlier. The repurposed bunker beneath the Siberian forest had originally housed Cold War communications equipment designed to survive nuclear bombardment. Project Ovid converted the facility into a signal monitoring station equipped with military-grade sensors and cryogenically cooled amplifiers capable of detecting electromagnetic anomalies across vast frequency ranges. Pavel Morozov led the research team that activated the dimensional signal scanner array in November 1996. Their stated objective involved monitoring atmospheric disturbances and unusual Schumann resonances, but their equipment was calibrated to detect signals that conventional physics suggested should not exist. On the night of November 18th, at exactly 2:13 in the morning, the scanner registered a 4-second burst of data unlike anything in their reference libraries. The signal appeared as an ultra-low frequency oscillation, followed by complex harmonic patterns that formed no recognizable electromagnetic signature. When rendered visually, the waveform created a fractal spiral shape that repeated but never exactly duplicated itself. The transmission seemed to originate from a direction that aligned with no known celestial or atmospheric source. As the team refined their directional measurements, they discovered that the signal path entered Earth's atmosphere at impossible angles, arriving simultaneously from above and below as if curving through folded space. Over the following week, similar signals appeared with minor variations in pattern and duration. Each transmission registered only on the analog components of their detection array, particularly the magnetite core field transducers. Digital receivers remained completely silent during the anomalies, suggesting that whatever was generating the signals operated through resonant interaction rather than conventional electromagnetic transmission. Morozov proposed that the signals represented unintentional intersections between adjacent dimensional layers, brief moments when the boundaries between parallel realities became permeable enough to allow information exchange. In his final log entry, he wrote that the transmissions were not messages, but pressure points, locations where one reality was testing the membrane that separated it from others. The signals stopped abruptly on November 25th. 2 days later, the facility suffered a power failure that destroyed half of the scanner array. Official investigators blamed electrical overload, but the pattern of damage suggested that specific components had been deliberately targeted. The site was sealed due to radioactive contamination concerns, though no radiation sources had been present during the original construction or research phases. Morozov disappeared shortly after the investigation concluded. A brief obituary appeared in a regional newspaper several weeks later, listing no cause of death or burial location. The remaining team members were relocated to different research positions and signed confidentiality agreements that remain classified. Fragments of the original signal data eventually leaked through academic networks and online forums. Analysis by pattern recognition software identified mathematical structures consistent with Calabi-Yau manifolds, the geometric objects that string theory uses to describe hidden spatial dimensions. If Project Ovid detected genuine intersections with parallel realities, then the boundaries of our universe may be far more fragile than current models suggest. The signals could represent natural fluctuations in dimensional stability, or they might indicate that other realities are actively probing the barriers that separate them from our own. The research implications extend beyond theoretical physics into questions about whether advanced civilizations in adjacent dimensions might be attempting to establish contact through methods that our science is only beginning to recognize as possible. These possibilities became even more disturbing when similar technology was deployed for consciousness research in Ontario. Deep within the basement laboratories of Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, Dr. Michael Persinger worked alone through the winter nights of 1993. The building's heating system cycled on and off in irregular intervals, creating a background rhythm that punctuated the silence of the neuroscience wing. Persinger had been refining his electromagnetic helmet design for 18 months, adjusting solenoid positions and calibrating field strengths with the precision of a watchmaker. The device resembled a modified motorcycle helmet, its interior lined with copper coils arranged in specific geometric patterns. When activated, it generated weak magnetic fields targeted at the temporal lobes, regions of the brain associated with spatial awareness and emotional processing. Persinger called it a neurotheological interface, though his research notes referred to it more simply as the consciousness detector. The first volunteer session took place on February 12th. Graduate student Jennifer Walsh settled into the reclining chair while Persinger positioned the helmet and initiated the magnetic field sequence. The laboratory's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Walsh closed her eyes and reported her subjective experiences through a wireless microphone. After 7 minutes of exposure, Walsh opened her eyes and turned toward the corner of the room. She asked who else was present. Persinger confirmed that they were alone, but Walsh continued to stare at the empty space behind his left shoulder. She described feeling observed by someone standing just outside her peripheral vision, a presence that seemed curious rather than threatening. The sensation persisted for another 4 minutes before gradually fading. Walsh removed the helmet and attempted to locate the source of the presence she had detected. She walked to the corner where she had sensed the observer, but found only laboratory equipment and filing cabinets. The experience had felt entirely real, yet no physical explanation existed for what she had perceived. Persinger conducted similar sessions with 43 volunteers over the following 6 months. 37 reported sensing an unseen presence during magnetic field exposure. The descriptions remained remarkably consistent across different subjects, an awareness of being watched, usually from behind or to one side, by something that possessed intent but remained invisible. The most detailed account came from Dr. Sarah Chen, a visiting researcher from Beijing University who volunteered for a double-blind session in August. Chen wore the helmet for 12 minutes, while Persinger monitored her brain activity through EEG sensors. At the 8-minute mark, Chen began speaking in Mandarin, describing a figure made of shifting light standing beside the equipment rack. When Chen opened her eyes, she continued to see the luminous form for several seconds before it disappeared. She had never experienced hallucinations or unusual perceptual phenomena prior to the session. Her EEG readings showed heightened activity in the temporal lobes throughout the period when she reported seeing the figure. Persinger's most unsettling discovery emerged during paired sessions involving identical twins. When one twin wore the active helmet in the primary laboratory, the other twin, seated in a separate room with no electromagnetic stimulation, began reporting similar present sensations at precisely the same moments. The synchronization occurred even when the twins were isolated in different buildings on campus. David and Robert Morrison participated in one such paired session on October 15th. David wore the helmet while Robert waited in a conference room 3 floors above the laboratory. At 3:47 in the afternoon, David reported sensing someone standing behind his chair. At exactly the same time, Robert called the laboratory telephone to report feeling watched by an invisible observer who had entered the conference room. The Morrison twins repeated the session 1 week later with similar results. When David experienced the present sensation, Robert simultaneously felt the same awareness of being observed. Neither twin had been informed about the other's participation until after both sessions had concluded. Persinger began investigating whether consciousness might extend beyond individual brain boundaries, operating as part of a shared electromagnetic matrix that his helmet could detect or influence. The device seemed to function as an antenna, picking up signals from a field of awareness that connected separate minds through mechanisms that conventional neuroscience did not recognize. Word of the research attracted attention from multiple government agencies by early 1994. Intelligence representatives visited the laboratory and observed demonstration sessions without offering explanations for their interest. Within 6 months, Persinger received funding offers that came with research restrictions and classification requirements he was unwilling to accept. The original helmet was dismantled in December 1994 after university administrators cited safety concerns about electromagnetic exposure. Persinger's research notes were archived under seal, and he was prohibited from discussing the consciousness detection experiments with media or academic colleagues. A simplified version of the device appeared in military psychological operations documents that were briefly declassified in 2002 before being reclassified under national security provisions. These portable electromagnetic emitters were designed to influence emotional states at a distance, but their connection to Persinger's original research was never officially acknowledged. Persinger died in 2018, having spent his final years working on unrelated neurological studies. His consciousness detection research was never replicated by other institutions, and the original equipment specifications remain classified in university archives. The basement laboratory, where the experiments took place, has been converted to storage space. The electromagnetic shielding installed for Persinger's work remains in place, though no current research requires such specialized protection from external field interference. What Persinger detected during those sessions may have been the first technological glimpse of consciousness as a field phenomenon rather than a purely biological process. If awareness operates through electromagnetic channels that extend beyond individual brains, then the boundaries between separate minds may be far more permeable than current models suggest. This possibility became more urgent when similar principles were applied to accessing subconscious information directly. The research facility outside Kyoto occupied a converted telecommunications building that had been abandoned after fiber optic networks replaced the microwave relay systems of the 1980s. Dr. Takumi Hoshino's team installed functional magnetic resonance imaging equipment throughout the 3rd floor, connecting the brain scanners to machine learning systems capable of processing neural data faster than biological neurons could generate it. The Subconscious Visualization Project began in 2012 with a straightforward objective: teaching artificial intelligence to recognize patterns of brain activity associated with specific visual experiences. Volunteers viewed thousands of photographs while their neural responses were recorded at millisecond intervals. The AI system learned to correlate activation patterns in visual cortex regions with different types of imagery. By 2014, the artificial intelligence could predict what images subjects were viewing with 93% accuracy based solely on their brain activity. Hoshino decided to test whether the system could reconstruct visual experiences that occurred during sleep, when conscious control over mental imagery was suspended. The first dream reconstruction session took place on November 18th, with graduate student Kenji Nakamura as the volunteer. Nakamura fell asleep in the scanner at approximately 10:30 in the evening. When he entered rapid eye movement sleep 3 hours later, the monitoring system began detecting familiar neural patterns associated with visual processing. The connected computers translated these signals into image sequences, showing Nakamura walking through a vast library with shelves extending upward beyond the reach of overhead lighting. Books lined the walls in precise rows, their leather bindings reflecting warm illumination from reading lamps positioned at regular intervals. The reconstruction captured details including dust motes floating in shafts of light and the texture of wooden floors beneath Nakamura's feet. When Nakamura woke the following morning, his description of the dream matched the computer-generated imagery with disturbing accuracy. He had indeed dreamed of exploring an enormous library, and he confirmed specific visual details that the system had successfully reconstructed from his sleeping brain activity. Subsequent dream recordings became increasingly sophisticated as the AI learned to interpret more complex neural patterns. The system captured dreams involving moving figures, changing weather conditions, and emotional atmospheres that translated into visual representations approaching photographic quality. The breakthrough occurred during a session with volunteer Yuki Tanaka on December 3rd. Tanaka reported dreaming about exploring a European city with distinctive architecture and street layouts. The reconstruction showed cobblestone squares surrounded by Baroque buildings with elaborate facades and wrought iron balconies. When research assistants investigated the architectural details, they discovered that Tanaka's dream city matched the historical center of Prague, as it had existed before urban redevelopment in 1968. Tanaka had never visited Prague or studied Central European architecture. The neural patterns that generated the reconstruction contained information about a place that existed only in archived photographs and historical documents. The AI had somehow accessed knowledge that was not present in Tanaka's conscious memory. 3 weeks later, another volunteer dreamed of participating in philosophical discussions conducted entirely in ancient Greek. The subject did not speak or understand classical languages, yet the dream reconstruction captured visual elements suggesting accurate historical settings and costumes. Classical scholars who reviewed the session data confirmed that the reconstructed scenes depicted plausible academic environments from ancient Athens. The research team began experiencing sleep disturbances that followed disturbing patterns. Multiple members reported nearly identical dreams featuring a tall tower in an empty landscape, with something observing them from its highest point. When they compared their dream journals, the consistency of architectural detail and atmospheric mood across different dreamers was unsettling. Dr. Hoshino terminated the project in March 2015, citing ethical concerns about memory interference and the unexpected complexity of subconscious information processing. His official report recommended against further research using current methodologies, but provided no specific explanation for the decision to discontinue successful experiments. The laboratory was closed 6 months later. Hoshino accepted a position with a private biotechnology firm and signed confidentiality agreements that prevented him from discussing the dream visualization research. The AI systems used in the project were dismantled, and their neural pattern databases were reportedly destroyed to protect volunteer privacy. The Kyoto building where the experiments took place now houses a software development company specializing in mobile applications. The upper floors remain vacant. Building management has declined requests for renovations or historical tours of the space, citing structural concerns that require ongoing evaluation. Government agencies have shown increasing interest in brain-computer interface technologies that could theoretically access subconscious information or influence dream content. Defense contractors have filed patents for neural monitoring systems that bear resemblance to the techniques developed in Hoshino's laboratory, though no direct connection has been officially acknowledged. If the dream reconstruction system truly visualized subconscious imagery with the accuracy that session records suggest, then the boundaries between private thought and external observation have already been technologically breached. The implications extend far beyond simple privacy violations into questions about whether individual consciousness operates independently or as part of shared information networks that technology might access without awareness or consent. These concerns intensified when electromagnetic monitoring techniques were applied to environmental rather than biological targets. The abandoned farmhouse in North Yorkshire had stood empty for 15 years when the British Society for Psychical Research received reports about persistent atmospheric disturbances affecting visitors to the property. Local residents described sudden emotional shifts upon entering certain rooms, particularly a narrow hallway where picture frames hung broken along walls stained with water damage from roof leaks. The pattern emerges across decades and continents with unsettling consistency. Laboratories seal their doors. Researchers relocate without forwarding addresses. Equipment disappears during routine inspections. Documentation vanishes from archives that once held detailed records of phenomena that challenged fundamental assumptions about consciousness, matter, and the boundaries of human perception. Each technology operated for brief periods before encountering the same obstacles that seem unrelated to scientific methodology or funding limitations. The Kirlian camera captured energy fields that persisted after physical death. Tesla's consciousness lens detected presence without proximity. McDougall's scale measured departures that conventional physics cannot explain. Dream visualization systems accessed memories that volunteers had never formed. The electromagnetic recordings continue. Digital sensors monitor facilities that once housed these experiments, detecting occasional anomalies that appear in classified reports before disappearing into restricted archives. The Yorkshire farmhouse remains empty. The Nevada testing site shows concrete foundations where buildings once stood. The Kyoto laboratory building houses software developers who work on floors below the sealed upper levels. Government agencies maintain their silence. Private collectors trade fragments of documentation through channels that operate beyond academic oversight. The technologies themselves exist in pieces scattered across storage facilities and private estates, their components separated to prevent reconstruction of complete systems. What these devices detected or created may never be fully understood. The questions they raised about the nature of consciousness, dimensional boundaries, and electromagnetic phenomena remain unanswered in official scientific literature. The researchers who operated them have moved on to safer projects or disappeared entirely from public record. The silence itself may be the most significant evidence. Technologies that reveal hidden layers of reality encounter resistance that extends far beyond normal peer review processes. Whether this suppression protects dangerous knowledge or simply eliminates inconvenient anomalies that threaten established models remains unclear. The laboratories are quiet now. The equipment has been dismantled. The researchers have signed their agreements and moved to positions where such questions are no longer asked. Yet the phenomena these technologies detected may persist, waiting for the next accidental discovery in some midnight laboratory, where curiosity overcomes caution and someone notices that the readings do not match what conventional science predicts they should find.